Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Completionist. For this episode, what I wanted to talk about is I wanted to talk about games or game series that absolutely need another entry. So one of the reasons why I wanted to do this topic, guys, is over the last couple of weeks I've been doing some inventory on my video game collection, just getting things organized. And as I was going through some of the games and I was looking at some of the games that I've actually enjoyed playing, it actually breaks my heart that some of my favorite games of all time have not had another entry in a really, really long time. Some of them as long as, over 20 years. And it actually really breaks my heart because I often wonder why a lot of these games never got another entry or even got a sequel. And I thought it would make for a really interesting topic for this video because I desperately think that these games do need another entry, because I think they implement some really great gaming mechanics. I think some of the gaming mechanics in these games, for me, is what made it personally enjoyable. And it breaks my heart that a lot of these games have not had a entry in a really long time. And some of the games that I'm actually going to mention to you never even had a sequel. They've only had their one base game, and that was it. Kaput. We never heard anything else from them. So anyway, guys, let's get started, because much like all my other videos, I feel things are going to run long, and I didn't even realize I'm wearing the same goddamn shirt that I wore on the last video that I made. So the first game that I wanted to talk about, guys, is a JRPG for the PlayStation 1 that got released in North America in 2000. To this day, this JRPG has my favorite battle system of all time, and it's perplexing to me why this game has not had another entry. Because the game was successful, it sold enough copies that it made greatest hits. So you can get a black label version of the game, or you can get the green label version of the game. And that game is The Legend of Dragoon. This one hurts me because I don't understand why this game never had a sequel. Because it is a good game. It really is. I think the problem is I think Sony wanted this game to be more popular than what it was. Because I remember when this game came out, and this game was being labeled as the Final Fantasy VII killer. And I don't know who on the Sony marketing team thought that was a good idea. Like, you don't say that. Like, Final Fantasy VII is the PlayStation 1 JRPG that really put JRPGs on the map. It pretty much opened the floodgates, to get all these great JRPGs from Japan in the North American market. So, if you want to make a game to be a part of that community, you don't go insulting the foundational game that helped open up the floodgates to begin with. Because, I remember people saying, Legend of Dragoon is going to be the Final Fantasy VII killer. And the harsh reality is that I don't think anything could have ever been the Final Fantasy VII killer. I don't think any other JRPG could have opened up the floodgates for more JRPGs to enter the market than Final Fantasy VII, because Final Fantasy VII just had that perfect sense of transition that it could be appealing to both the hardcore JRPG players and the casual JRPG players, and I don't think there was any other JRPGs that could have really done that. I don't think, imagine if, Xenogears or Suikoden 2 was the flagship JRPG for the PlayStation 1. I don't think those games could have opened up the floodgates for all the other JRPGs that we actually got for the PlayStation 1. But going back to The Legend of Dragoon, I love this game. It's, what this game did is that this game took your typical turn-based battle system and it actually made it engaging. in the sense that how many times, guys, have you sat playing like a turn-based RPG and you just get into random battle, and you're just like clicking buttons, just attack, magic, item. Just, you're not really engaged into it. But one of the reasons why I love Legend of Dragoon so much is that the turn-based battle system does keep you engaged, because it has a timing mechanic. In order to do max damage, you have to like time your button presses perfectly, and you know, enemies and bosses can actually counterattack. So sometimes you got to hit a different button to make sure the counterattack doesn't work, so you know, you can keep with your combo. And it's just that it's a huge game. It's a 4-disc game. It was a highly ambitious project, and I actually really enjoyed it. Even to this day, you know, one of the boss battle themes in Legend of Dragoon and one of the battle themes are in my top 10 of JRPG boss battle themes and top 10 JRPG battle themes. And it's just, I love the timing attack mechanic. I love the music in the game. I love the battles in the game, even though, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, the encounter rate is a little on the higher side. But, you know, I like the fact that, you know, you have that little arrow, you know, over the character's head to let you know when you're going to get into a random battle. And it's just that I can't talk enough about, you know, the battle system in the game, because it is really that good. And I know a lot of people do have problems with Legend of Dragoon, but you know, I really enjoy it. You know, nobody likes Shauna or, you know, Miranda, because they don't do combo attacks. You know, they just have a single arrow attack. But in Dragoon form, personally, I think they're some of the best characters in the game, because they can actually heal your characters while you're in Dragoon form. You know, I just love the magic spells in the game. I love the over-the-top attacks in the game. You know, sometimes some of the English voicing in the game is not the greatest, and especially the final cutscene, you know, it's really, really off-sync. But you can tell that a lot of time and a lot of money got put into this game. And I don't know what Sony was expecting, to be honest. I don't know, you know, what they wanted out of this game, because as far as I'm concerned, if your game can go greatest hits on the PlayStation 1, it's a success. I just think they probably had it in their minds that maybe that they wanted it to overtake Final Fantasy VII. Maybe they set their bar and their expectations way too high, and the fact that it probably didn't even get remotely close to the Final Fantasy VII numbers, they probably just abandoned of ever looking at a sequel. But, you know, with how expensive video games are these days, I think it would be hard, you know, to do a sequel unless they kind of kept the PlayStation 1 graphics, or maybe even slightly downgraded it, you know, a little more, or maybe release it on a portable system, or, you know, make it a Switch title instead. But The Legend of Dragoon is just one of those really, really awesome games, and it absolutely breaks my heart that it hasn't had a sequel, because it really is that enjoyable. So, as always, guys, throat's getting dry. So for the second game, guys, it's a game that a lot of us hold near and dear to us, especially for us SNES players. It's a series that has had 8 entries. Unfortunately, the games on the PlayStation 2, which is where the series sadly ended, aren't the greatest. They usually have the reputation of being the worst games in the series. But we haven't had another entry in this series since 2005. Let me just check just to make sure, guys. I got my good old Wikipedia here. So, yeah, it got released. No, it actually got released in North America in 2004. And that series unfortunately ended with Mega Man X8, released in North America in 2004. And we haven't had an entry since. And that is really heartbreaking, because I really love Mega Man X, And I think the Mega Man X series is the pinnacle of 2D Mega Man gameplay. And it just breaks my heart because obviously the first 3 games for the SNES when Mega Man X came out in 1993, you know, were so good and so timeless and just really excellent. And then we got into the PlayStation 1 and Mega Man X4, so good. Like, they just basically took everything that was great about Mega Man X, X2 and X3 and just made it that much better. But after X4, according to the majority of the Mega Man X fans, they just slowly, they really hit the pinnacle at Mega Man X4 with regards to graphics and sound design and gameplay and that kind of thing. And then they reached Mega Man X5, and then to most fans, after Mega Man X5, they just stepped off a very steep cliff and just went pfft. But what's really funny about that, guys, is that one of my favorite Mega Man X games is actually one of those last 4 entries, and I really love Mega Man X6. A lot of people really hate that game. They think it's one of the worst in the series. You know, I think it's very unanimously known that Mega Man X7 is usually the worst in the series, but people will put Mega Man X6 like literally right next to it, and I love Mega Man X6. Don't ask me why, maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment. And Mega Man X8, you know, was sort of like kind of a nice apology for the garbage fire that Mega Man X7 was. But for me, I haven't had a chance to play the PlayStation 2 entries. I played every Mega Man X game from X1 to X6, and I've completed X6 and X4 and the original Mega Man X. I haven't completed any of the other ones yet. Why we should have another entry, and I don't understand why. It's just that maybe the Mega Man crowd has just become so jaded after the disaster of Mega Man X7, and then after Mega Man X8, nobody really cared anymore. But I think Capcom really owes it to themselves to really go back to this series and just don't try to make it revolutionary. Just go back to keeping it basic. Just look at Mega Man X4 and just try to make it like that. And just like keep with the great sprite work, or just keep with some very beautiful in-depth 2D gameplay. Because everyone was excited when Mega Man 11 came out. And Mega Man 11, a lot of people actually really enjoyed. And it's just like, I'm just thinking to myself, you know, why can't the Capcom team, you know, look at what they did with Mega Man 11 and trying to revitalize the original Mega Man series and try to apply that to Mega Man X. We need another Mega Man X game. And it's just that learn from the lessons from Mega Man X7 and X8 and just go back to the first 4 Mega Man X games and look at what made those games enjoyable. And personally, I would love to have another entry because the Mega Man X games, especially the earlier ones, are absolutely timeless. And I think they will always remain the pinnacle of 2D Mega Man gameplay. And it actually breaks my heart that, you know, we haven't had another entry in the Mega Man X series since 2004. So we desperately need another Mega Man X game because it's just a great experience all around, all depending on who you ask. Except Mega Man X7, and I haven't even played that one, so I look forward to succumbing myself to that punishment. Alright guys, for the third game, it's a game for the N64 that I really love, and a lot of people know what my favorite N64 game of all time is, and it's this game, released by Rare in 1997. And no, it's not Donkey Kong 64 or, you know, the Banjo-Kazooie or anything like that. My favorite N64 game of all time, and I highly and even though I haven't played a lot of games in the N64 library, I highly doubt anything will beat this game because I really truly love this game so much. And that game is Blast Corps, released for the N64 in 1997. I wish this game would have another entry. I really wish it would. It's a unique experience, and it's something completely different, but yet it has this addictive feel to it. And I think it helps that the game has some really awesome music in it. Because there's a track called Cromlech that I just love. It's just like a really ear-pumping song that I absolutely love. And anytime that song plays in a level, I'm just addicted to it. I'm just so into it. But it's just like, it's such an interesting premise to drive around demolition vehicles, knocking down buildings and fences and houses and just destroying things so that you can clear a path for a carrier that's out of control carrying nuclear warheads. And if the truck carrier hits any kind of building or obstacle, then the level is over and you lose. It's just like, I kind of feel like in this current gaming environment, you know, this is something that they could do so much more and make it much more inventive and just really have a lot of fun with. And it's just that I understand why the game is a one-of, because it's such an obscure presence. It's such an obscure idea to actually base a game around. And I don't even think the game was really that financially successful, because obviously when you think of Rare, you know, everyone thinks Donkey Kong or, you know, Banjo-Kazooie. And it's just that, you know, it really shows, especially for Rare, especially the N64, especially during the N64 generation, you know, they had some really inventive ideas. And usually when you try new ideas and when new ideas can work is when a company really takes advantage of its creativity. And it just breaks my heart that, you know, Blastcore never had its time to shine. I think a lot of people just looked at the title when it got released in 1997 and just passed by it, you know, for other titles for the N64, because they did have some really popular games in the late 1990s. You know, obviously you had, you know, Ocarina of Time, and you know, you had Donkey Kong 64, and you had, you know, Mario Kart 64, and you had GoldenEye, and you had all these great games. So it's fairly easy for Blastcore to get lost in the shuffle. And it's just unfortunately how it is that if your game is never popular, you know, it's never going to get enough recognition or enough sales to even justify a sequel. But you know, I think when Rare did that Rare game package, you know, where they had all their games released on a compilation disc, I think it was for some Xbox system, I think Blastcore got included in that. And it's just a really great game. And the time trials, it just has this really addictive factor that, you know, that keeps you playing, and you get to drive these giant mechs, and you know, to do cartwheels and, you know, rolls, and it's just that, you know, you get to do so much demolition and it's so much fun. You know, you get to drive this futuristic motorbike that shoots missiles. You get to drive a big dump truck and a big bulldozer and just knock buildings off, and it's just a really fun experience. And I kind of feel like in this present day gaming environment, especially with how graphics, how it evolved, they can do so much with that now. They can make the explosions grander, they can make the puzzles more complicated, they could just take what made the original Blastcore so great and just make it even better. But I think it's just one of those games that will never have a sequel, as much as I would love to see it. But to this day, it is still my favorite N64 game of all time, and I would love to see a sequel made, even though 100% chance I don't think anyone will ever touch that series ever again, which is truly unfortunate. Alright guys, for the next game, we're going back to the PlayStation 1. The original game for this series was released for the PS1, and then it had a name change when it made the transition over to the PS2. And the game that I would love to have another entry in is Shadow Hearts. Originally started as Kudelka for the PlayStation 1. And this is another one that hits hard because I don't think the last Shadow Hearts entry from the New World deserves as much hatred as it gets. Because even though From the New World is the only Shadow Hearts entry that I've played myself, and I know it's a huge departure from the first two Shadow Hearts games, because I hear the first two Shadow Hearts games were much more serious and much more depressing, and From the New World was much more lighthearted and much more much more comical. But I don't think that should be a detriment for killing a series with another amazing battle system. And Shadow Hearts, even though The Legend of Dragoon has my second favorite turn-based battle system of all time, Shadow Hearts has my second favorite turn-based battle system. And that's the Judgment Ring. And it kind of uses the same kind of aspects of the Legend of Dragoon battle system, that it uses timed hits and timed battle mechanics, you know, in order for your combos to go through. You're given a ring, and then as the needle spins around, you have to hit it at certain points to keep your combo going. And that's a good way to keep a player invested in a turn-based battle system instead of just like casually just hitting a button here and there. And it just breaks my heart because From the New World got released in 2005, I think, and we haven't had another entry, and that's just heartbreaking. And it's just like, I really wish they would go back to that series and, you know, make another entry. And it's just, it doesn't even have to be a continuation, you know, from the New World. They could do something completely different. But that Judgment Ring battle system, I don't think should ever be abandoned. It's such a great, interesting concept, you know, for a battle system, and I don't think it should be abandoned. It's just, you know, Shadow Hearts From the New World, you know, took place in the like 1920s, 1930s. You know, what's wrong with creating a Shadow Hearts game that takes place in the 1980s? Or, you know, the 1970s, or, you know, the 1990s. It's just that, you know, you can make it a little kooky, you can make it a little wacky, you can make it, you know, as serious as the other two games. But, like, I don't think that RPG series should be abandoned. It's such an enjoyable RPG series, and but it's just, when you play it on the PlayStation 2, it's just the way it looks and the way it plays, it just screams a PlayStation 2 title. You know, if for someone never played a PlayStation 2 game and you just looked at the game, you would just automatically know it was just a PlayStation 2 title. And I just love the game. I really do. And even though From the New World is the only one I've played from that series, it's, you know, like The Legend of Dragoon, one of the boss battle themes and one of the main battle themes are actually some of my favorite RPG battle themes, you know, of all time. And I would just love to see another entry in that series. Please bring back the Judgment Ring. I think it's a great idea for a battle system, and I would love to see Shadow Hearts make a comeback. And for the final game, guys, we're going to do a fighting game series. And, you know, for those that know what my favorite fighting game is, it's obviously pretty obvious. We've only had 2 entries in this game. It started off for the PlayStation 1, and the other entry got released for the Sega Dreamcast. It started off in arcades, I think, in 1997. And even though one of the characters finally made an appearance in Street Fighter V, it just breaks my heart that, you know, we haven't had another entry in this series, and that is Rival Schools and Project Justice. I want this fighting game series to come back so bad. You know, the funny thing with fighting games is, like, it seems like, you know, more different fighting games just keep coming out, and so many old fighting games are just completely abandoned. And it's just like Capcom is just sitting on a treasure trove of just really great fighting games, and they're not doing nothing with them. You know, I know we have this like Darkstalkers, Night Saviors, collection coming out, with all the Darkstalkers games. But it's just like, I really wish we could have another Rival Schools entry. Akira from Rival Schools, she got released in Street Fighter V as a playable character. And, you get to see Rival Schools characters, have cameos in story elements of Street Fighter V and in Akira stage in Street Fighter V as well. And I just don't know. I don't know why Capcom just doesn't go back to this series. I think it's too late. I think if they ever decided to make another Rival Schools game, I don't think anyone would care, and I think the people who were addicted to Project Justice and Rival Schools are just far too old to even devote time to it anymore, but it would be such a killer announcement if they did. I would love to see like another Rival Schools game, but it's just at this point, it'd have to be a brand new bunch of characters because in this day and age, all the characters are all grown up now and they're all out of school, so it wouldn't be like Rival Schools, it'd be like Rival Midlife Crisis. But I would really love to see this series come back because I really love the music in this series. I really love the team-up attacks, and it's so easy to play. I remember playing Rival Schools for the first time, and it's such an easy game to pick up and play. The combos aren't difficult, performing the moves isn't difficult. It's an easy game to play, but a hard game to master. And I think that's how most fighting games should be. It should always have that approach that, it should be fun to play for everybody. It shouldn't be overly difficult or overly complicated. If you want to do something cool, you don't have to input, these really long combos or really complex directional patterns, on the gamepad or anything along those lines. Rival Schools in the grand scheme of things can be a bit of a button masher, especially if you want your characters to do some really cool things, but I don't think that's a real detriment to how good this game series is. And I would just love to see another entry, and I don't think it's going to happen as much as people would love to see it, but it's probably the biggest fighting game series I would love to see come back. I remember when Street Fighter V came out, and the one character I always wanted to see back in the Street Fighter universe, I always loved Karen from Alpha 3. And when Street Fighter 4 got released, and they started releasing all those characters, and Karen was never one of them, and then here comes Street Fighter V, and one of the first character announcements was actually Karen, and I was so excited because she's actually one of my favorite Street Fighter characters of all time, her and the Kensuke counters. But I would love to see Rival Schools, Project Justice have another entry, because it's just one of those great fighting games that no matter how old it gets, it will always be enjoyable, and it will always be that timeless factor. So anyway guys, those are 5 game series I would love to see another entry for. Two game series I would have definitely added to the list, but we're getting new entries for them. Are Advance Wars and Valkyrie Profile. So if we didn't get those game releases, I'm sure those 2 games would have made it on the list as well. But I look forward to giving those brand new games a try, and it's nice to see those series get revived, especially since they haven't had a game in their main series in a really long time. So anyway guys, that takes care of another episode of The Completionist. So as always, take care, and I wish you nothing but the best. Later.